The Boeing VC-25 is perhaps the most iconic plane in the world. And it is, of course, the aircraft that the US president most often uses while traveling, giving it the call sign Air Force One. But there is also a lesser-known aircraft that is just as vital to the president, one that hopefully would never need to be used. This is the Boeing E-4B, better known as the Doomsday plane, and its nickname is not exaggerated as the plane was made for nuclear war. A plane built for the end of the world, designed to survive when everything else fails. Able to command an entire war from the sky and packed with technology the public almost never sees. And for this video, I digitally reconstructed and mapped out the inside of the aircraft to understand how the Doomsday plane actually works. The Doomsday plane exists to solve one very unique problem. What if the United States is hit by a nuclear attack? This hypothetical scenario became very real during the 1950s and 60s, when the Cold War tension was at its peak. Both the US and the Soviet Union were amassing massive stockpiles of nuclear warheads, and both nations were proving that they can strike the other nation, with the United States stationing nuclear missiles in Europe. And during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Soviet Union placing their missiles in Cuba. During this time, the United States established a complex system of protocols for how it would actually carry out a nuclear strike against an enemy. Because in order to authorize a nuclear strike, there is one person, and one person only, who can do it. And that is, of course, the president. The president's call with orders to strike would then be processed through the US Strategic Air Command, which is located at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. This location was chosen because it is roughly in the middle of the country and sits well beyond the range of hostile missiles or nuclear-armed bombers. From this command center, orders are carried out to complete the strike using any capability of the US nuclear triad. Because the US has three main ways in which it can launch a nuclear strike. From land, using intercontinental missiles. From the sea, using nuclear submarines. Or from the air, using bombers. So this is the chain of command used to launch nuclear strikes in the US. But there is one big problem with this logic, because all of this only works effectively if the US launches the initial strike. But what if another nation strikes the US first instead? A nuclear detonation releases a wave of electromagnetic pulses, or EMPs. And such a blast can take out the electrical grid, as well as any vulnerable communication methods. This means that the call from the president might not reach its designated target. Additionally, important command centers, such as the Pentagon, the White House, or even Offutt Air Force Base itself, might be targets during a nuclear attack and could be taken out. Therefore, the US wanted to prove that even if they are hit first, even if American cities, military bases, and command structure is wiped out, they can still strike back. This idea became known as mutually assured destruction. If any country does attack the United States, the US will be able to retaliate. And so, Operation Looking Glass was established. This is the name for a series of aircraft, specifically EC-135s, that are designed to take over nuclear command authority should anything happen to ground control at Offutt. Its name comes from its mission. It is meant to mirror or be a looking glass for ground control. And so, Boeing KC-135 Stratotankers were stripped and retrofitted with communications equipment to make sure they have the same capabilities in the air as they would on the ground. But planes that are parked on the ground are easy targets. And so, beginning in 1961, Operation Looking Glass goes on 24/7 airborne alert. This means that at least one of these aircraft is in the air at any given moment. This way, even if the entire Looking Glass fleet is destroyed, there will still always be at least one EC-135 in the air that can take over nuclear command. What is almost unbelievable to me is that this airborne alert lasted for a staggering 29 years, from 1961 to 1990. For any given moment, day or night, of those 29 years of US history, there always was at least one EC-135 in the air, ready to launch a nuclear strike. Only in 1990, just as the Cold War was cooling down, the constant airborne alert was halted. But even then, there's still always at least one plane that remains ready to take off within minutes. Eventually, in the 1970s, these EC-135 aircraft were replaced by more modern Boeing 747-200s, retrofitted with all of the communications equipment needed to keep the president connected to anywhere in the world. And these Boeing 747s make up the Doomsday plane fleet that is still being used to this day. So let's take a look inside to see what makes this such a unique aircraft. Towards the very front of the plane, there is a command office suite. Basically, a private area reserved for any VIP that may be traveling on the plane. This is likely where the president will take up quarters should Doomsday ever come. But in practice, it is actually most commonly used by the Secretary of Defense, because while traveling abroad, the Secretary of Defense typically flies using one of these aircraft. Just behind this suite is the galley, or the flight attendant station. And next to the galley is a small conference room where meetings can be held in flight, almost like a flying situation room. It seats up to 9 people and could very well be the room where the fate of an entire nation may be held if the United States ever enters nuclear war. Just beyond the conference room is a briefing area. Here, a podium is set up so that leadership members can address their staff. There are also multiple phones, as maintaining contact with military units, government agencies, and command centers around the world is one of the aircraft's primary missions. And during foreign visits, this area also doubles as a press room, where journalists can be seated and press conferences can be held mid-flight. Continuing on past this room is the battle staff area. This is the largest room inside the plane. Here, several workstations are set up, and you'll find equipment you'd expect to see in a typical office setting, like computers, phones, printers, and copiers. It is essentially a cubicle space. From here, the military staff can track unfolding events and can help coordinate a response to a national emergency. Just past the battle staff area is the communications section. This is where the aircraft's communication specialists work to maintain contact with different military units. The aircraft is equipped with multiple redundant communication systems, and if one network becomes unavailable, operators can quickly identify the issue and switch to another system. Also monitored from here is the aircraft's Survivable Super High Frequency, or SHF, system. This system is located in the distinctive hump on top of the aircraft, and inside it there is an antenna that transmits very short radio waves, capable of carrying large amounts of information across long distances. This system is primarily used to establish direct links with US military satellites in orbit, providing a highly secure means of communication, even when other networks are unavailable. And just below the communications workstation sits probably the most complex piece of communications equipment on this aircraft. In the middle of this room sits a compartment containing a spool of antenna cable. This cable can be deployed while the aircraft is in flight. Then, the wire is reeled out through the back of the plane, and it is trailing behind it through the sky. At full length, this antenna extends a staggering 5 miles. This enormous length is needed to create a very low-frequency antenna. Very low-frequency radio wavelengths are absolutely massive, stretching for miles. And to transmit them effectively, you need an antenna that is at least some meaningful fraction of that wavelength. When this antenna is in use, the aircraft typically flies in gentle banking turns, which helps to keep the wire stable and hanging in a more controlled position behind the plane. Basically, the jet has to carefully fly in circles while dragging the cable behind and below it. The benefit of transmitting at these frequencies is that they can travel incredibly long distances, and, more importantly, they can partially penetrate seawater, which means this aircraft can communicate with one of the most critical parts of America's nuclear arsenal: ballistic missile submarines hiding below the ocean. Two operators can sit at the station to deploy and monitor the antenna, and a periscope lets them see the cable while it is trailing behind. These operators can then communicate with the pilots to ensure that they are flying the aircraft at the right speed and height to make sure turbulence doesn't damage the antenna. Located just above this room is a small section with additional seating, as well as the crew rest area. The Doomsday plane is capable of mid-flight refueling and is designed to stay in the air for extended periods of time. If necessary, the plane can stay in the air for an entire week without ever needing to ground. By that point, the aircraft could have theoretically circled the Earth more than 4 times, all without a single stop. And the only reason the plane would need to land after a week is because the engines would run out of lubricant. And just in case this rest area isn't enough space, there is an additional one upstairs as well, just behind the cockpit. One thing that sets this plane apart from other Boeing 747s is that many of the airplane's systems have been specially hardened to ensure that they can survive the electromagnetic blast released during a nuclear strike. The plane's windows are covered in wire mesh that helps prevent powerful electromagnetic pulses from damaging sensitive systems. And even in a time of modern glass cockpits, most of the controls in this plane remain analog, another precaution to protect the Doomsday plane from a potential EMP blast that could disrupt sensitive electronic equipment. Everything about the Doomsday plane is set up to support the President and Secretary of Defense if the day of nuclear war ever comes. It is an essential aspect of deterrence for the United States. And these are just the E-4B, of which there are 4 aircraft. These are operated by the US Air Force. In addition, there are also 16 E-6 Mercury aircraft that are operated by the US Navy, with somewhat overlapping responsibilities. Together, these aircraft create a highly redundant command and control network. If critical infrastructure on the ground is damaged or destroyed, many of the same functions can be shifted into the air, helping ensure that orders can still be transmitted and received during a national emergency. To me, the airborne leg of the triad remains one of the most fascinating elements of military technology. And no aircraft embodies this better than the B-2 Spirit, a bomber so advanced that more than 3 decades after its first flight, it still looks like something from the future. Capable of flying at high subsonic speeds, the bomber can be anywhere in the world in less than half a day. My friends over at Mustard have made an incredible documentary covering how the B-2 was developed. And they are using incredibly detailed 3D animations to visualize what makes it such a remarkable aircraft. They also just recently started a brand new series called Unsealed, where each episode takes a deep dive into the design process behind some of history's most ambitious engineering projects. For example, the second episode of this series explores the chain of compromises and cost-cutting measures that ultimately led to the crash of a DC-10 in 1979. Unsealed is available to watch exclusively on Nebula, which is also where I have released several of my own exclusive documentaries. So many creators you probably already watch are making bigger and more ambitious projects on Nebula. There are comedy series like Abolish Everything, history documentaries like The Battle of Britain, as well as short and feature-length films. Basically, I'm listing all this to say that Nebula has way more than just airplane videos. But if you are interested in planes, we do tend to have a pretty good selection of that as well. If you sign up using the link below or scan the QR code on the screen, you will get 50% of an annual subscription, so you can enjoy Nebula for just $2.50 a month. Thanks for the support, and thank you so much for watching this video.